Hello and welcome to another Mixed Media Wednesday for the Vicki Boutin Design Team. This week I'm working with the Mood Board Challenge, and I'll put a link in the description box below to that. So you can see that I've laid out the watercolor markers from the Color Kaleidoscope collection in Vicki Boutin. I'm using her water brush, and I'm going to add colors to coordinate with that Chasing Rainbows paper on the left. That's the pattern paper that's going to be my background. So you can see I added purple, and then I added the blueberry. I think the purple is called plum pudding, and now we're working with the blueberry, might be blueberry pie. Right now I'm working with wet on wet, so I'm adding each color, and before the next color dries I'm adding some of the next color so that they get a blend in between. And now I will add I think this one's called Juicy Pear. And if you need to stop the video to see any of the products, you can hit pause. And all of this is still wet. I'm moving on to the yellow. And what creates the faux alcohol ink technique is bringing the heat tool in. And you can see right here, when I bring in the heat tool, the thing I love about these markers is it creates those water lines that you get when you make alcohol ink backgrounds. So there's a blended portion in the background, and then when you heat set it, you get the strong watermarks. And that is what creates so much dimension and texture. So this is where I'm blending the background with the yellow, and then I'm adding more intense color, blending the colors, and once you heat set it, you'll get those lovely marks. You'll see that it'll really pop out. At first it doesn't look any different than a regular watercolor background, but the heat tool really changes it up. You heat set it, it really changes because of the markers and the pigment. So if you need more concentrated color, like I just added a dab of the sugared strawberry, which is the pink, because I wanted to create a light orange. So you can see when I heat set this and add more of the sugared strawberry, it'll create a more intense orange right there. And you can go direct to paper if you have water on there, because the ink pigment will blend. And I really like how this turned out. These watercolor markers, if you get a chance to play with those, they're really fun to play with and experiment with and try to create different techniques with. Here I sprayed with a spray bottle directly on, and it created some splatters, but that's okay. We're kind of going with a messy look here. You can always cover those splatters on the right with gesso. Vicki Boutin white gesso will cover those. So now I'm moving on. I think this is the plum, and so I want to create a magenta in the middle, so I mix the plum and the sugared strawberry. I'm liking the watermarks here. I just want to make sure that I'm kind of lining up, not exactly, but I am trying to line up with the pattern paper, and that's how I choose my colors. Because once I start the layout, you're going to see that the stripes are going to go vertically, and so this faux alcohol ink technique will be dripping down from the color on the pattern paper. Now see how that, when you heat set it, you get those strong marks, and I like that effect. It did blend, the purple and the magenta blended while it was wet, and then if you heat set it quickly, you'll stop those from bleeding into each other. That's why I like to add the heat tool, and you'll just have to play with the markers to get familiar with that. So this is the teal, and some colors I add more water, some colors I add two colors in and try to get them to blend. See, the heat tool kind of blended those together. So you can use it and play around with it, and it's really fun to create this. And this mixed media, the White Foundations mixed media art paper in the background from Vicki Boutin is really heavy duty. It's 140 pound, and yet it's smooth and a nice, clean, warm white, so that you can really load it up with water and media and it won't warp. So even though there's a little bit that looks warped there, it will flatten out when it dries. Especially because I'm adding the heat tool. Typically another kind of paper would really warp when you heat a portion of the paper, but this paper withstands that. we're going to add we have the Juicy Pear, and then I'm going to go back and add some more. I wanted more watermarks, so you can go back and add more to a section if you feel like it needs more of the intense color. And then at the very bottom, I might be off camera, but this is Watermelon Burst, so it's at the very bottom of the Chasing Rainbow, there's a more concentrated green, so I will be adding that. And I'm just wanting to get more of the watermarks, that's why I'm bringing in the heat tool again. And I'm lining up that paper to see if it kind of follows the colors. Now that has dried. The faux alcohol ink technique and the white foundations mixed media paper has dried, and I'm sorry for the shake. I wanted to show you on camera. I'm just using 2 punches to create. Now you could use a cut file, any cut file or any punch to create a rolled flower. You could even just hand cut a spiral of paper and roll it up. So any tool that you have in your arsenal, you want to use that to create a rolled, any kind of bloom or paper flower on your paper, on your layout. This is an EK Success. It's supposed to be a succulent punch, so we're going to roll this up, and I roll it to the inside so that when you bend the color out with a paintbrush, I'm just going to roll it around a paintbrush pretty quick here, and then once I get it rolled up, I'll use the paintbrush to curl all the leaves down, so it gives it a more realistic look. Right now you're like, that looks like a strange crown. But once you flatten it out and see, I'm using the paintbrush to kind of curl the leaves just to give them a more realistic and soft, organic look. I love this magenta pattern paper. So what I'm going to do with the blooms is place each of the blooms over the color that it coordinates on the background paper, the Chasing Rainbows paper. And keep most of the embellishment and paper and photos that's going on the layout is going to be over the pattern paper background. And then I'll leave that alcohol ink technique on the bottom portion mostly alone, just so that it can stand out on the layout. I didn't really want to cover it up because it's just, those markers make it so pretty. So here you can see how I'm going to roll that up. I punched a circle of the same pattern because you will be able to see into the center. So I will use the Express glue from American Crafts because it sets in like 5 seconds. So here you can see I finished all of the punch. I used the other punch that was in the shot before, and I'm using a powder tool so that I can heat emboss with white embossing powder, that small flower. Here's the Color Kaleidoscope stamp and die set, and I'm using Versamark ink so that I can heat emboss and create some white heat embossed flowers, just because I wanted to bring some of the neutral white up to that intense colored background. You can't see this on camera, but in real life you can see the watermark stamping. I took a photo because I like the grouping. I like how the blooms look on the upper portion. So I usually take a photo so I can remember. I'll have to take everything off to heat set this. Because I wanted them in a specific area, I created 3 stamped flowers. So here I realize I'm going to have to take everything off, even though I really like where they are. And I'm going to go ahead and pour on the Hero Arts white embossing powder. I like this embossing powder because it's a true white. It's not a yellow white. So those 3 areas, and then I'm going to have to shake off the excess. I should have taken the flowers off before, but there, they've all been stamped. You can see now that I've added white punched bits also to layer in with all the colored ones, just because I thought it added a little bit more of the neutral. And this vine paper, I'm going to use the black and white pattern behind the photo. There's the photo of the desert blooms in the cactus garden. And I'm going to take the gesso, white gesso, and place it on an acrylic block, add some water with a paintbrush, and create some splatters of gesso on the background, just to soften around that white embossed flower and to once again bring more of a neutral. When I'm creating a really intensely colored layout like this, I like to add lots of black and white. Lots of neutral to tone it down a little bit, even though I love the saturated color. I'm just directly taking the paintbrush, since the splatters are harder to control. You can just dab it on where you would like some of the little dots. I'm going to heat set that really fast just so I don't smear it, because that's happened before. I get too excited to put other stuff on the layout and then I'm like, oh well, I smeared it. Taking my finger and a wet wipe to kind of dab down some of the peaks that happened with the gesso. Now I will place everything back how I had it, the yellow over the yellow, lime green over the lime green, and one orange flower. Just adding everything back, and I changed the arrangement. Here's where I realized that I kind of want three, I didn't want everything grouped together. I kind of want three separate areas up on that rainbow portion of the layout. So I will create the three groupings, and I'm deciding where I want to put the photo. At first I thought it, but I didn't really like it smack in the center of the layout. I wanted it on not right in the center. So I'm using the art wedge from Vicki Boutin to just dab it in the gesso to kind of soften that line between the pattern paper and the white foundations paper that I'm going to lay over this. You could leave this step off. I have actually stamped in white too to kind of create that border, just to soften that area. And I am adding a little bit more of the gesso directly to the art wedge, and you can go wash this off. Off camera I went and washed this. I'm using the American Cross red line tape because this super sticky red tape will hold down that heavy mixed media paper. And I'm using the sticky thumb foam dots, foam squares, to raise everything up off the background. These aren't too high. I feel like they're a normal size, and I'm cutting the excess from those punched backing to the succulents. I'm just cutting off the excess so you won't be able to see that, and then gluing them with the express glue, some foam dots and some of the express glue. I added one pattern, black and white pattern there, just so that it was another place on the layout and it didn't look like the only black and white pattern was lonely there. Gluing everything down. This is sped up 20 times. I really wish I could scrap this fast. Wouldn't that be awesome? Or like super, was that Flash? It'd be like Flash Scrapper. And so I'm adding all of the magenta color there, and I'm deciding that I want to journal on this notebook paper from the Color Kaleidoscope collection. And I'm adding some phone tabs under that black and white pattern. And now is I get to add some of the puppy stickers and just different embellishments, and I'm adding 2 banners to the layout, and the previous collections also coordinate some older embellishments from Vicki Boutin. Here the title is created with these Paige Evans thickers. I love these because they're small enough to create a title but not take over the page, because my focal point is definitely that watercolor alcohol ink technique. And I'm deciding where to add the banners, and I will journal and complete the date on that tag. And I'm adding another banner here, and I folded up the top portion of that yellow banner from the cut apart sheet in the Color Kaleidoscope, adding some enamel dots. These are the ones from the previous older collection. You can see the package there, or the backing for the package. And all I have to do is journal off camera, and this layout is done. I have some still shots here. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd love it if you'd like and subscribe. Bye!